reporting on the biggest stories in sports since 1990. This is Outside the Lines.
Super Bowl 58 in Vegas, baby.
The Frozen Four college hockey men's basketball Final Four will be coming to Las Vegas.
Sports betting and sports are chocolate and peanut butter. In every way they can be intertwined, they are intertwined.
It used to be something you did bootleg, underground, through bookies named Crooked Nose Bob. Now it's a legitimate form of entertainment.
Let's make some money today, fellas.
Say!
Taking $5 to hit 500,000.
I don't think we can actually comprehend how fast this came to fruition.
Because of the proliferation of it, we have a bigger challenge in front of us.
Cornerback Isaiah Rodgers is being investigated for violating the NFL gambling policy.
I think we'll continue to see incidents, absolutely.
Several athletes placed bets on games in which they played.
I felt like I'm a kid in a college town. Who's going to catch me?
There's been a 30% increase in gambling problems.
Essentially no different than alcohol use disorder, tobacco use disorder. It's an addiction.
It could be a public health crisis that grows.
Welcome to All In, sports betting in the U.S., an Outside the Line special report. I'm Jeremy Schaap. We're at the dawn of a new era. We're in the infancy of the age of legalized sports wagering in the U.S. What was once taboo is now mainstream, all thanks to Murphy versus the NCAA, the 2018 Supreme Court decision that flung open the doors to legalization. Here at ESPN, for 4 decades, sports gambling was rarely mentioned. Now it is a constant of our coverage, and we even have our own sports betting app. But back in the 1970s, the sports establishment was vehemently anti-legalization. Pete Rozelle, the NFL commissioner, said this: "In our carefully considered judgment, legalized gambling in any form would seriously harm our sport and other team sports as well." Nearly half a century later, legalized gambling is here, and it is only continuing to grow. It is, in fact, a whole new ballgame.
As the confetti flies, Super Bowl champion!
It is the biggest event in American culture. Nothing comes close in terms of eyeballs or dollars wagered.
100 or 400? 400.
But until recently, if you wanted to bet on the Super Bowl and do it legally, you had to come here. Which is exactly why the NFL and other pro sports leagues wanted nothing to do with Las Vegas. Until now.
Super Bowl 58 in Vegas, baby.
Mahomes rolling right to Mecole Hardman. Touchdown. Chiefs win Super Bowl 58.
But wait, there's more.
Las Vegas will make its mark in the world of college sports.
The Frozen Four college hockey men's basketball Final Four will be coming to Las Vegas.
All these events in Sin City, once as unlikely as an ice fishing competition in the Everglades. So how did we get here?
The future of sports gambling in America is about to change in a big way.
In 2018, the Supreme Court overturned the federal ban on sports betting and said any state that wants to offer sports betting can offer it.
The 2018 ruling didn't just change where people can bet, it transformed the industry as a whole.
It used to be something you did bootleg, underground, through bookies named, Doc and Jimmy and Crooked Nose Bob. Now it's a legitimate form of entertainment, like going to a game, going to a movie.
In the sports betting space is pre-pass vote. About half of Americans believed that it was right to legalize sports. And now, we are now 5 years removed from the decision, it's nearly 75%.
This has been the single largest expansion of gambling that our nation has ever undergone. I don't think we can actually comprehend how fast this thing came to fruition.
The way that it's being experienced now by most people in the United States, how would you describe that experience for the sports bettor out there?
They have so many options. That's the beauty of legalization. 15, 20 years ago, you could come out to Las Vegas and that was really the only choice that a consumer had. When you look at today's world, everything's at the touch of their fingertips on their mobile phone or on their computer.
It's instant access. It gives someone the ability to just click with the money you have in your account. It's a pretty seamless experience.
Obviously, the apps will rule the handle, but there's nothing like the social experience.
Meaning the experience of being in a sports book, which are popping up from coast to coast, even inside some sports arenas.
People like being in that atmosphere. They want to sweat games with other people. People make a day of it, to say the least.
This legalization of sports gambling, how has it changed the way that people bet on sports?
What's amazing now is that all the activity is not on the outcome of the game, right? It's all the prop bets of how many yards are going to be thrown. What's the temperature going to be in the Kansas City-Miami game?
Let's take a look at a same-game parlay that we're going to build together. I'm going to do the first leg. What this means is we combine 2 or more bets into one within the same game.
Same-game parlays became something that a lot of operators realized, oh, that's an area where our fans are most interested.
In the last few years, the proliferation of in-game betting, that's become commonplace.
Why do people want to bet in-game?
You can be reacting to what's happening in real time.
Donovan Edwards racing to the end zone.
And feel like you've got an edge. And then again, once you've got, skin in the game, it just makes it that much more exciting to watch the rest of it.
Ready, set, go. Welcome to day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4 of the ladder challenge, where we try to turn $10 into $10,000 in only 10 days.
As sports betting continues to evolve, social media is also riding the wave, attracting the attention of a younger consumer.
My name's Austin O'Connell. I run the Call on Our Shot channel, and what that means is that we give out picks every single day. And we have a large community, whether that's on YouTube, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, you name it. The ladder challenge, it is this mindset that you're trying to turn $10 into $10,000 in only 10 days. And while it sounds like a pipe dream, the whole purpose of it was, you find your favorite bet on one day. And if that hits on the next day, you roll over all of your winnings. 10 straight picks would turn into a little bit over $10,000.
Unlike most in the space, Austin O'Connell has earned enough money through subscribers and sponsorships to have made making picks a full-time job. He now has a total of more than 800,000 followers on his social media accounts.
If I give out a normal pick, people might have different opinions about it. But if we're all on one same pick that we're all trying to ride all the way up to 10 grand, it makes the community aspect of it awesome, and people are just super engaged on it.
Even as the legal sports gambling industry has experienced explosive growth, the old-fashioned way of doing business endures.
The black market still exists today, both in states where gambling is legal and certainly in states where it's illegal.
Whether sports gambling was legal, as it is now, or illegal previously, our concern remained the same, which is we don't want it to have an effect on the outcome or the integrity of any game. It's just because of the proliferation of it, we have a bigger challenge in front of us.
In fact, about 40% of Americans reside in states where sports wagering remains largely illegal. But the juggernaut is only picking up speed. And as it does so, the industry continues to break down the barriers that once divided it from the sports establishment.
We moved from a place where, by and large, there was an antagonistic posture among almost all of the leagues to a full bear hug embrace.
The fact that during sports shows we're talking about point spreads and prop bets today is just part of the dialogue. Sports betting has put it on steroids, and it's become a way to introduce folks to the product.
It's a good fan engagement tool. It's a way for some set of our fans to engage with the game in ways that they hadn't before in a legal way.
Right now, sports betting and sports are chocolate and peanut butter. They are completely integrated. In every way they can be intertwined, they are intertwined.
In 2023, the American Gaming Association estimated that nearly 70 million Americans would wager more than $15 billion on March Madness. Back then, sports wagering was legal in 33 states. Now we're up to 38, which can only mean more gamblers and more money wagered in 2024.
The Super Bowl was the most watched and the most bet on Super Bowl ever. There was an over-under on Brock Purdy's rushing yards, and it was set at 12.5. It attracted a lot of action from bettors. It was one of the most heavily bet props of the Super Bowl at multiple sports books, most of the money being on the over. And he went over that 12.5 yards on the 49ers' first drive of the second half. He got up to 13 yards in the final seconds of regulation. But he took a knee to run out the final seconds and send the game into overtime. That kneel down was recorded as a 1-yard loss, turning the over into the under.
Since 2018, 12 NFL players and an assistant coach have been suspended for violating the league's gambling policy. Last June, in one fell swoop, 4 players were disciplined for betting violations. Isaiah Rodgers Sr., a defensive back, then with the Indianapolis Colts, was among them. Rodgers had to sit out the entire 2023 season, but has signed with the Philadelphia Eagles in anticipation of eventually being reinstated. Rodgers recently sat down for an exclusive interview with our John Barr.
It's mid-December in Tampa, Florida. Instead of practicing with his teammates, Philadelphia Eagles cornerback Isaiah Rodgers Sr. is working out back at his old high school. Not because of any injury, but because of the news that broke on June 29th.
Multiple reports say cornerback Isaiah Rodgers is being investigated for violating the NFL gambling policy.
At the time, Rodgers was entering the final year of his $3.4 million rookie deal with the Indianapolis Colts, finally set to become a starting cornerback. But after violating the NFL's gambling policy, Rodgers was suspended for the 2023 season and released by the Colts.
It's a call that you never really want. Knowing that a team that made your dreams come true is now the team, letting you go. I was down for a few months.
Like all NFL players, Rodgers was educated about the NFL's gambling policy. No betting on the NFL, no visits to any sports books during the season, and no gambling will at a team facility or venue.
We've produced videos, clubs have had team meetings, league personnel has fanned out to the clubs to share all of this with them because, unlike what it was 10 or 15 years ago, all of this is so readily available. And that means that it's our responsibility to share as much education as we can with as many people as we can so that there's no confusion as to what the rules are.
Isaiah, why did you start betting on sports?
I was just trying to help friends and family out, just knowing that it wasn't legal at the time in Florida and it was in Indiana. So I was just really going about it of just trying to help them out and help them do things they couldn't do down here, which was illegal at the time.
Isaiah, do you think you have a gambling problem?
No. I know for sure I don't.
Had you ever gambled before this experience?
No.
To be clear, you're saying you were placing bets on behalf of other people.
Correct. I never included myself into any of the gambling. Like, I never took any dollar. I never placed a dollar for me. I never placed a bet for me to win.
NFL investigators were able to determine Rodgers placed bets at the Colts facility. In an apology on a social media account, Rodgers wrote, "I want to take full responsibility for my actions. I've let people down that I care about." It's been reported that you bet upwards of 100 times, betting 25 to 50 bucks, including a bet or bets on your own team, the Colts at the time. Is that true?
The $25 to $50 bets are exactly true, but it was more of crazy leg parlays with just $25 trying to make a crazy amount. Like just funny bets, nothing too serious. It's just a huge mistake on my part.
It was also reported that you placed a $1,000 prop bet on the over-under rushing yards, by which we presume was Jonathan Taylor.
Yep.
That's a bet you won. Is that report true?
That report is true, with it being $1,000, but that wasn't made from my device. During that time it was placed, I was actually on the field warming up for a game.
So you're saying somebody else used your account to place that $1,000 bet on Jonathan Taylor's over-under rushing?
That bet wasn't directly Isaiah Rodgers placing that bet.
Okay, wait, so somebody else had your phone?
No. You can sign in on computers or anything. But once my phone was geotagged at work from the first bet, I have to take accountability for every bet. Throughout the investigation, they got my cell phone records, they got everything that they needed. I ended up getting pinned at work. Just opening the app on my phone at work, placing bets for people. With me being pinned at work is what triggered them to say, hey, Isaiah's sports betting, but I knew the rules. I wasn't supposed to do it, and I gotta take what comes with it.
People may wonder whether you ever altered the outcome of a game because of a bet. What would you say to those people?
False. I studied too hard and too long and worked too hard to even get to this position to go out there and say, I'm gonna make this guy catch the ball and score a touchdown on me just for $25, $50 bets. Like, nah, that's not even the type of person I am.
You're in the fourth year of a $3.4 million deal. That's 850 grand, man.
Yeah.
And you're making $25 to $50 bets. Why?
I questioned myself too, but I thought, I probably wouldn't get caught, I wouldn't get in trouble. I was just really been a good-hearted person, just trying to help people. It would never happen again.
Yeah.
Never.
Isaiah Rodgers Sr. says he's currently in the process of applying for reinstatement to the NFL. He hopes to know more about his status after the start of the league year in early March. And you can find John Barr's digital story on Rodgers online at ESPN.com.
The Jaguars case of Amit Patel, an ex-employee of the Jaguars. He pleaded guilty to embezzling approximately $22 million from the team. Most of it was used to play daily fantasy sports on FanDuel and DraftKings. It's the most high-profile case linked to a gambling addiction since the 2018 Supreme Court decision, which kind of jump-started this expansion of legal sports betting. Patel's attorney has said his client suffers from a gambling addiction. The Jaguars have expressed their desire to recoup the funds Patel spent on FanDuel.
A century ago, the World Series was what the Super Bowl is now. So imagine if a group of players in cahoots with organized crime had fixed Super Bowl 58. If they'd lost on purpose. Imagine that and you'll have a sense of the impact of the 1919 Black Sox scandal. Those White Sox didn't merely throw the series to the Cincinnati Reds. They altered the course of sports history. They made gambling and associating with gamblers the capital crime of American team sports, which also meant that eventually Las Vegas was strictly off limits.
People come in Vegas and they have experiences they wouldn't have anyplace else in the world. They feel free, they feel liberated.
21 years ago, the creative team at the marketing firm R&R Partners captured the anything goes spirit of Sin City in a now iconic ad slogan.
Can I get a wake-up call tomorrow morning, please? Can I get that to go to my cell phone instead of my room?
We knew we had a winner, and we wanted to really launch it in a major way.
That major way turned out to be a TV ad campaign Billy Vasiliadis and his team planned to run during the Super Bowl following the 2002-2003 season. The NFL had other plans.
All right, what you're about to see was banned from the Super Bowl broadcast. It's a commercial about Las Vegas.
We got one guy missing in action. All we got is a set of dentures. What are we going to tell his wife?
Good morning. You guys need some coffee?
Black, yeah, black coffee.
I'll be right back.
We tried to buy the spot, and the NFL very nicely told us no. And then it became the spot that the NFL wouldn't run.
Decades of betting scandals left the major sports leagues and the NCAA leery of attaching their brands to Sin City.
So there was always that fear of kind of the old Vegas, if you will, the mob Vegas, fixing games and shaving points.
In 1963, the NFL suspended two of its biggest stars for the entire season for betting on NFL games. In 1980, investigators discovered members of the Boston College men's basketball team had shaved points in a scheme involving organized crime. In 1989, Pete Rose was banned for life for betting on baseball. Gambling scandals like those led Congress in 1992 to pass the Professional and Amateur Sports Protection Act, or PASPA, essentially banning sports betting nationwide outside of Nevada.
New Jersey wants to appropriately regulate sports gaming. We want to do it because 65% of the people of the state of New Jersey voted that they want to do it.
In 2011, New Jersey became the first state to challenge the federal ban on sports betting. Then, in 2014, a turning point. NBA Commissioner Adam Silver penned an op-ed under this headline.
My point was, there's massive, massive sports betting going on in this country. If it's going to go on, let's make it, transparent. Let's bring it into the sunlight, so to speak, and let's regulate it.
Things like March Madness and the Super Bowl have consistently been the most bet-on events in America. But up until May of 2018, the only place you could bet legally was in Nevada.
And then the day that changed everything.
A watershed moment in gambling history and perhaps even sports history as well. The Supreme Court has voted in favor of striking down the federal anti-sports gambling law.
The Supreme Court decided states should be able to determine for themselves what level of gambling they should have. And so what we have seen is this massive movement.
In 2018, 8 states made sports betting legal. And it was just the beginning.
Sports betting has expanded more rapidly, and more people have started to gamble on sports since 2018 than any other form of gambling in our nation's history.
At this time, we're looking at about 40 U.S. jurisdictions with regulated sports betting. Of some kind, they're all different, right? And that happened in 5 years.
The amount Americans have legally bet on sports, or the handle, has gone from more than $6 billion in 2018 to more than $100 billion last year. In total, more than $300 billion wagered on sports, generating over $5 billion in tax revenue. To help make sure that revenue continues to grow, the gambling industry spends hundreds of millions each year on advertising. You can't watch any game these days without seeing ads like this.
Nice! Called it, baby.
Concerned with at-risk people being targeted, New York Congressman Paul Tonko borrowed language once used against the tobacco industry to propose a federal ban on gambling advertisements.
All advertising probably has some order of targeting to it, but in this case, it's a very vulnerable audience that you're going after.
We need to make sure that kids, don't see these ads. We need to make sure that they have disclosures and disclaimers.
I think we need to take a closer look at this because it could be a public health crisis that grows in tremendous dimension.
Are we facing a public health crisis, as Congressman Tonko says?
No, absolutely not. I think that what we are facing is a migration of the American sports bettor who had no legal opportunities to bet on sports into the safe, regulated marketplace.
Among the jurisdictions that have approved legal sports betting, there's a big difference in how tax revenue from wagering is spent. In 2023, Massachusetts spent $17.2 million on problem gambling programs. Montana and the District of Columbia, nothing.
The DC mayor and the council, in their infinite wisdom, cut every single penny of their public funding for problem gambling programs. This is the jurisdiction that the first in-stadium sportsbook has online sports betting, and 4 years later, they've cut all their public funding. That is and should be absolutely unacceptable.
Despite its growing pains, the sports betting industry continues to break records. FanDuel and DraftKings recently reported that more than 26 million customers bet on Super Bowl 58. with a handle exceeding $612 million. And in a few weeks, another major event on the sports calendar will take place, the men's NCAA basketball tournament.
We have to remember, of the $103 billion legally wagered in the U.S. last year, $27.5 billion was wagered on collegiate events, and the number 1 and number 3 most wagered on events in North America are March Madness number 1, college football playoff number 3.
The major sports leagues and the NCAA once wanted nothing to do with Sin City, but now several professional teams call Las Vegas home. And in 2028, the city will host the men's basketball Final Four.
There's such a connection between sports fandom, sports betting, and Vegas that eventually I think it just became a smart business decision. Vegas is the greatest entertainment center of the world. Sports is a great piece of entertainment.
There is a long, sordid history of point shaving in college sports. In the early 1950s, campus basketball was awash with such scandals. In fact, since 1945, there have been 15 match-fixing scandals in college sports that involved organized crime. Since Murphy versus the NCAA in 2018, there have been no such fixes as far as we know. Charlie Baker is completing his first year as the president of the NCAA, and he says that maintaining the integrity of the games under his purview is of paramount importance. But with legal wagering now just a click away in most of the country, that is no mean feat. Here's John Barr.
It's mid-January at the University of North Carolina. Mark Potter and Ryan Tatusco, both former professional athletes and recovering gambling addicts, are delivering a message to the Tar Heels football and baseball teams. It's the same message the NCAA has hired them to deliver more than 100 times in the past year to collegiate athletes across the country.
The point of this session, really, is understand the risks of gambling to you guys.
As athletes, you guys have more increase in exposure, right? Legalized sports betting is coming online right here in the state of North Carolina. Exposure is all around you guys.
Athletes are up to 6 times more likely to struggle with gambling-related harm than the general population, and then young people at college are at least twice as likely to develop a gambling addiction. That creates all kinds of vulnerabilities for a young person.
There's a lot of new fast stuff out there that these young people are dealing with, and we've all got to make sure that we protect the players.
How prevalent is the level of harassment of athletes they receive online from gambling interests?
I very rarely have a sit down with a group of student athletes where somebody or some group of somebody's doesn't bring up the amount of harassment and the brutality of some of the stuff that comes across their phone, sometimes from bettors and sometimes from fans.
I had like a bad game last year, and I just went into my DMs after the game, people telling me, I need to kill myself, and I wasn't, an athlete, stuff like that.
The more we can get this out in the open and we can kind of shine the light, on this harassment monster, hopefully that can make people believe and make them see that this is not okay and this is something that needs to stop.
What are the consequences of that harassment for the athletes who are targeted?
Well, the biggest thing is fear. And we actually had one championship where there was a threat made against a team from a bettor that was serious enough that we gave the team 24/7 protection for the rest of the time they were in the tournament.
Threats from organized crime and gambling interests to the integrity of the game have long been feared by the NCAA, dating back to point-shaving scandals with Boston College during the 1978-79 season.
Trouble at Boston College.
Investigators are examining the allegation of point shaving.
And in 1994, with Arizona State guard Stevin Headache Smith.
Stevin Smith agreed to fix basketball games.
Wow, Arizona State is doing everything it can to throw this game away.
Even today, with the spread of legal sports wagering, betting scandals continue.
A gambling investigation in Iowa, then Iowa State.
Suspicious betting activity.
Alabama firing coach Brad Bohannon.
Several athletes placed bets on games in which they played.
As the number of states that have adopted legal sports betting has increased, so too have the problems. In 2019, according to an NCAA survey, 3% of athletic departments reported dealing with a sports wagering problem within the last year. In 2023, that number jumped to 27%.
What do you think that increase tells us?
It was more than just like a little problem. It's a major problem.
To prevent the next gambling scandal, the NCAA has enlisted the help of Las Vegas-based U.S. Integrity, a monitoring service that acts as a watchdog for betting irregularities.
When we think back to the history of scandals in American sports, like Arizona State in 1994, what made the Headache Smith situation so unique? They fixed 5 games. What we're trying to do now, in collaboration with the sportsbook operators and the regulators and the professional and collegiate sports leagues, is stop at the first game.
How old were you, would you say, when you placed your first sports bet?
I was probably 18, 19 years old.
For all of the NCAA's efforts, there are still gamblers that are invisible to investigators, like Jack, who asked us not to use his real name. From 2017 to 2019, he was a practice player for a Division I basketball program in a Power 5 conference. He says he started betting a few $100s a week on sports his freshman year on the illegal market.
How often would you bet on college basketball?
Every day, depending on what I liked or, what I knew about something, because I had known guys pretty much playing across the country at one point.
Would you bet on your own team?
Yeah, my junior year I'd bet, my senior year I'd bet on the team.
So you're a practice squad player your junior year, and you're betting on your own team?
Yeah.
You had to have known that was against the rules.
Yeah, but I think also at the same time, doing it illegally too is like you're already against the rules. I felt like I'm a kid in a college town. Who's gonna catch me?
By his junior year, Jack says he was betting in the thousands every week. He told us he developed a side hustle, acting as an agent for a bookie, taking bets from fellow members of the practice squad and a starter on the basketball team. But it didn't stop there.
I took a lot of football bets from football players.
Football players who were betting on their own team?
Yeah, their own team, other teams, basketball, football, you name it.
Were those football players who placed bets on their team betting on their team to win?
Yeah, sometimes, yeah.
What about to lose?
No, I'd never taken one to lose.
How many athletes were placing bets with you?
I'd probably say anywhere from 12 to 15, probably.
How do you police against someone like that, who is using bookies and illegal websites?
I don't ever see a scenario where there's an opportunity to sort of snuff out all this stuff because, generally speaking, people will find a way.
The NCAA goes to great lengths to preserve the integrity of the game. What does your story say about the limitations of that system?
It's kind of like robbing a store with a cop waiting outside. Kids are smarter than that. They'll go and find someone or find someone like me. You can always find a guy.
What do you think the odds are that we'll see another gambling scandal involving college athletics?
I think we'll continue to see incidents, absolutely. It's not that hard to imagine somebody just poking their friend and saying, I could really use your help this weekend. If you just miss a couple of free throws or, do one of the many different things you could bet on in a game, the chances for just a lot going wrong are very high.
More than 15,000 college sports events are monitored each year for suspicious activity, and roughly 40, just 0.25%, get flagged, according to the NCAA. At the recent National Governors Association meeting, Charlie Baker, who was previously governor of Massachusetts, urged state executives to eliminate prop bets from college sports. According to the American Gaming Association, 17 states restrict betting on college sports in some form or fashion, including 6 that specifically limit prop bets. For more on the story of the former D1 practice player and bookie we are calling Jack, you can find John Barr's digital story online at ESPN.com.
Kayshon Boutte was a standout receiver for LSU. He went on to be selected by the Patriots in the 2023 draft. He was arrested in late January in Baton Rouge on charges related to illegal sports betting. He is alleged to have placed nearly 8,000 bets, totaling hundreds of thousands of dollars on FanDuel, using an account under a fictitious name. At least 2 of his bets were on himself. According to the arrest warrant published by local media, he bet on himself to score a touchdown and to eclipse the over-under on his receiving yards in a game against Florida State in 2022. The NFL says it is now investigating the case.
It's every bettor's dream. Put down $5, win $500,000. A lovely thought, but unlikely. The odds astronomical. In the case of Travis Duffner, whom you were about to meet, it was just shy of 10 million to 1. 1 in 10 million. In nature, that's how often we see a white bison or a freckled blue lobster. In space, that's the likelihood of discovering simultaneously 4 quasars in close proximity to each other. What's a quasar? I'm not really sure, but a crazy NFL parlay? That's what this looks like.
I'm Travis Duffner, age 32 years old. I only bet really a couple times a week. My friend actually said, why don't you try doing anytime touchdown scores? I made the bet Friday night before Christmas.
When Travis Duffner put a $5 bet on a 14-leg touchdown parlay in the hope of winning nearly $500,000, the odds were 1 in 9.8 million.
Saturday comes around, I watch a couple of games. Those hit. Sunday, I'm kind of checking the games on my phone throughout the day. Chris Rodriguez, he was a longer odds to hit, but that was because he was the 3rd string running back for a while for Washington. And then Christmas Eve dinner, I'm watching some games in the background. I saw DK Metcalf catch a really crazy touchdown pass. That was when I was really starting to get in my mind, hey, this could really happen. At the end of the day, I had hit 11 of the 14. I was like ecstatic. And then the next morning, I woke up with probably the biggest knot in my stomach I've ever had. Checo scores to hit the 3rd to last, and the Eagles and Giants game happens. I had DeAndre Swift to score. That's probably one of the hardest ones to hit because he doesn't get a lot of opportunities inside the 5-yard line. So Christian McCaffrey was my last bet. I've hit a few small ones, but obviously nothing in the realm of this. So Merry Christmas, everyone. Let's go CMC. Taking $5 to hit 500,000. To see how excited my brothers were in the moment. My mom crying in the room, and then just running through my mind of how my life will change going forward. That was the most memorable Christmas we'll ever have.
Travis Duffner says that with his winnings, he paid off both his student debt and his car, booked a couple of family vacations, and started a college fund for his toddler son. Remember, taxes. Duffner, of course, is the exception, a rare kind of exception. For many more gamblers, the recent widespread legalization of sports gambling is much more problematic. These days, it's not only legal, at least in 38 states and counting, but it's at our fingertips. You're always just a click or two away from placing a bet. What do you get when legalization and technology intersect? A booming industry and a burgeoning crisis in gambling addiction as well, especially among young men.
What's the line?
It's like 60, I think I got like 64 and a half.
I like Lamar Jackson first touchdown.
It's Championship Sunday, and these University of Rhode Island students, all at least 21 years old, let us join them as they watched and wagered on the conference title games.
I feel confident. I feel confident in it. Let's make some money today, fellas.
I'd say definitely as part of the college experience. I'll look back on it and be like, I remember kind of like sweating out a bet with one of my buddies and, you know, in the living room or something like that.
Zay! Zay! Come on! These young men, they are the target demographic for the sports betting industry.
Oh my gosh! Are you kidding me?
That's freak. That's freak. There's no better feeling than being on a bet with all of your buddies and sweating one out and coming in with a big win. When it comes to sports betting, I think that's the pinnacle of enjoyment for me.
Powered by aggressive advertising campaigns, legal sports betting is spreading rapidly across the country, and the risks are growing with it.
Thank you for calling the Problem Gambling Helpline. My name is Michelle. How may I help you?
Sports betting became legal in Ohio on January 1st, 2023. 13 months later, the impact is clear.
I know you did speak on sports gambling. Is that the only activity you're having problems with?
In the first year of legalization, calls to the state's gambling helpline soared. They were up 56%.
We have been seeing an increase in the numbers of male callers between the ages of 18 and 24. We get people who, again, just have lost a large sum of money and are just realizing that they have a problem.
I would usually start by placing like a really small bet on something. It wasn't a big deal until I just really couldn't accept any loss. I lose $30, like, that doesn't feel okay. Why can't I just make it back? And then just so quickly, it just spiraled out of control.
All over the country, young men are discovering sports betting apps, and many are getting in over their heads. Like this 23-year-old that we're calling Randy.
On college campuses, how pervasive is sports gambling?
It was really, really intense. If you're watching with a group of people, it's like there's this real palpable peer pressure of what you really didn't pick a first touchdown scorer. It really feels that way.
What was the low point for you?
I had been working, I had about $7,000 in my bank account, and I lost all of it. So I ended up a year later losing like $13,000 in one day also. I think that at that point, I was really like in such despair. I felt like my life was over. I struggled with like suicidal ideation a lot. I would go through phases where it was really all I would think about.
And here you'll see the shadow of the brain. And essentially what we have here...
Research indicates that young people like Randy are most at risk.
Associated with reward. One of the concerns we have in the gambling addiction field is who's the most vulnerable to develop gambling disorder. The younger you are, combined with the more frequent you start gambling, is probably the highest risk factor you can have. We know that when we're growing up, that our brains are constantly growing, and it isn't fully formed, both structurally and chemically, until probably around our mid-20s. So in other words, the young person's brain reacts more intensely.
The danger is young people particularly may not have the awareness and experience that enables them to gamble responsibly. And so I believe strongly there is a need for better data and facts.
The last time the federal government conducted a study on gambling addiction was 1999. Currently, Washington provides no funding to combat gambling addiction. But now, Senator Richard Blumenthal of Connecticut is trying to change that. He's co-sponsoring a new bill to address what he describes as a mounting crisis.
I have introduced a measure called the GRID Act. The GRID Act would very simply provide a stream of funding to fight gambling addiction, to make treatment possible. The United States government has an obligation to fund treatment and research. It does for alcohol, tobacco, drugs. Same should be true of gambling. And part of the revenue from the excise tax under the GRIT bill that I've introduced would go to a national research study.
In November 2023, in partnership with Penn Entertainment, ESPN, which is headquartered in Blumenthal's home state, launched ESPN BET, its own sports betting app. What was your reaction when you heard that ESPN had entered into partnership with one of these companies?
I was regretful, but I am hopeful that there will be more safeguards.
Why regretful?
I have such enormous respect and affection for ESPN as a fan. I was regretful because it seems to give a seal of approval, validation, or legitimacy.
Also in Connecticut, the state government recently commissioned a study on the impact of legalized gambling. It found that 51% of sports bets in the state are made by problem gamblers, who represent 1.8% of all Connecticut residents. Easy access to sports betting has gambling addiction counselors alarmed.
Gamblers have the highest suicide rate compared to any other, addiction. I think that it being so enmeshed in society, we're really just at the beginning of it.
If your state has recently legalized online sports wagering and you're thinking about downloading that app, what's your advice?
I would say be honest about it. It's being marketed much more now as like fun, play, be happy, celebrate, sports, but just be aware that it destroys lives.
I think that the most important thing is to say that problem gambling is a real thing. And for those of us who represent the industry, getting sports betting right starts with making sure that we are looking at vulnerable populations. We are doing everything that we can to make sure that responsible gaming messaging is embedded in everything that we do.
The industry is growing faster than the infrastructure to treat problem gambling. And the sportsbook's message, bet, 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 is everywhere.
You're driving on the highway, there's a billboard for it. You're watching a show, there's a commercial for it. You're on your phone, there's an advertisement for it. It's probably a testament to how much money's in the industry with it right now, but it's everywhere you look.
As someone who has a problem with this addictive behavior and you like to watch sports, what is it like seeing all of these commercials, all of the ads that focuses on gambling?
It's upsetting to me. I see it as just a lack of care for the people. You're really putting so many people in danger so that you can make money. That's how it feels.
The NFL limits the number of sports betting ads shown during games. The league says they represent fewer than 5% of the commercials seen during its broadcasts. If you were watching Super Bowl 58, you saw 3 sports betting ads, 1 just before kickoff and 2 during the game. All those commercials include an 800 number for a gambling addiction hotline. Thanks for having joined us for All In, sports betting in the U.S. For all of us here at Outside the Lines,